understand, obviously, we know 2001, but it's a really exciting moment for the WPS agenda. As you mentioned, 1325, UN Security Council Resolution 1325 will be 20 next year. We think it's a really great opportunity to continue to raise their profile. We have these examples in the Act and its implementation, and hopefully the strategy will be coming down the pipe any day. So thank you all for wonderful presentations, and I'd love to take some questions.
Well, I've been synapsing wildly here. And one of the synapses was remembering that the way I thought of the 2000 Security Council Resolution 1325, I saw it as two of the four pillars. One is that as long as rape is a weapon of war, then girls and women are going to experience war differently. And as long as women are not at the peace table, it's not going to be as lasting a peace. That final comment is very well documented now, not as well as it was 20 years ago, but it's well documented now. And then that reminded me of back in 1985, when that was in my peacenik era, I managed and coordinated and raised money for something that we called Women for a Meaningful Summit. It was the Reagan-Gorbachev Summit in Geneva, the first one, and there were no women involved. And so we raised enough money to bring 35 women, including Bella Abzug and Maxine Waters and Jane Alexander, to Geneva to insist on having women as part of the conversation. So we've been talking about this for a while, and now we're seeing some action on that. I told Ariel before we actually started that the UNA National Capital Area chapter, I will help them work with you to start a chapter because I think that alignment is a very strong one. And there used to be a chapter here when I was on the board, but alas. And then finally, as important as data is and as important as communications is in media, advocacy, I think, is, it is a word that I heard it mentioned once, and I think it's the most important if we're going to change the way our government behaves on these issues. It's not enough to know all the facts. It's not enough to even to lobby. We have to elect the people who agree with us. So, it's my middle name, advocacy.
Yeah. Do you want to just jump in and talk about perhaps what are some of the activities and efforts that people in grassroots organizations or individuals can do to really raise the profile of this agenda?
I mean, I would just say very quickly around sort of national level policy. On one hand, quote unquote, the work is done. We have the act passed. We don't have guaranteed funding for it. So where people can push their appropriators to appropriate money, and I'm happy after the meeting to share sort of the numbers that we put together on what would be an entry-level, like bare minimum funding of the WPS Act. But then also, like, there are so many different ways where a law is only a piece of paper unless somebody enforces it. And Congress has changed. Maybe they're going to do more enforcement. But, I mean, especially on the Senate side, there are many Republicans who are allies of the WPS agenda because they understand the WPS agenda improves international peace and it strengthens our national security. And they are just as frustrated as many of us that the administration has been woefully behind on their commitments. And so backing up, I find it personally very difficult to, praise Marco Rubio, but he has been a meaningful ally on the WPS agenda. On other women's issues, maybe not. But really saying, I notice that you're succeeding on, that you care about this. I notice that you know the issue. I want to say I also care about this issue, etc., is always helpful and keeps the Republicans pushing on the administration and calling them out on being late and later and later and later. But I don't know if you guys have anything else.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I would, through Civil Society Working Group for Women, Peace and Security, CSWG, there's a new member organization, and I mentioned them, Jamie Dobie, Peace is Loud. So they came out with the kit, I'm sure everybody here knows about it, Women, War and Peace 2, screened on PBS in March. Our organization has made it a commitment that 6 of our chapters will be hosting events, and these events will fundraise for the WPS agenda specifically. So it'll be restricted funds that will go to UN Women specifically to that team. But it was a very affordable way to do it. So we paid less than $500 for the kit, and then our chapters, I had to educate them to an extent on what it is, what WPS agenda is, and how you can tie it very easily into women in politics, #women in politics, right? And at this point we just finished on May 18th, our San Francisco chapter has what's called the Global Voices Film Festival every year. And it's 10 films, all directed by women on a women's subject. And I can tell you more about that, but we had a screening, and Jeannie Rediker introduced the short film from the series, and now we're going to connect with Wise West at the chapter level and just start to talk about WPS in San Francisco. So often it's just that one event can jumpstart the conversation, and suddenly you have partners. So I think we need to get back to some of that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Very quickly,
Yeah.
on the Women, War and Peace documentaries,
Yeah.
you can go to pbs.org. There's 2 seasons. This season, 2 of the films I'd highly recommend if you're trying to spread the message. One is about Bangladeshi police women working in Haiti, because as much as it's about trying to provide UN peacekeeping operations in a complex crisis, it's about missing your children and dealing with husbands and workplace ambitions, and just on like a human level, you very quickly connect with these women, and it really frames the issue of peacekeeping operations and gender issues in peacekeeping at a level that, you don't have to know what's going on in Haiti to know about it. And then the other one was the film they did about the Northern Irish peace process, because it shows, what I love about it is it talks about the Women's Party in Northern Ireland and the impact of having a political party on for women, about women's issues, and mobilizing rapidly and putting your hand up when you didn't think you had the right to put your hand up, and it was scary, and you were asking your friends, and it was awkward, but it's so inspiring, especially as the younger generation, as we see sort of this new house come together. There are just so many links. That was really powerful. So, and I think
There's a question over here.
Thank you very much. My biggest challenge, and I think the challenge for most of us, is working with women themselves. Because I was so heartened when I saw how many women were elected to office this last election in the US, and it was encouraging. But I think sometimes we feminists, womanists, women, we tend to talk to ourselves. And we think that the masses, the women in rural areas and also in towns like this, are with us. But they really are not. Look at who elected Trump. Women, evangelical, white evangelical women. And are we reaching them? Is any of our organizations reaching them? I really doubt it. I come from Kenya, where we are seeing the same phenomenon, where women, progressive women, talk to themselves. A few women get elected in parliament, and we think that's going to change our problems or our situation. But they don't. There are very few in parliament anyway, just like there are very few women senators in Congress. But we haven't mobilized women around the world to hold men accountable, because until these men can be held accountable, we will continue to see the same problem. They are the ones who are causing the trouble. They are the ones, all the wars that we have, very few are started, actually predominantly started by men. And they are the ones who are negotiating at the table with the exclusion of women. Maybe you'll have one or two women, famous women who will get to the table. But the majority of women in Somalia, for example, where I work, are not at the table and may not be at the table until we hold those men accountable to make sure that they have to listen to what women are saying. And I don't know how to do that. So I want to see a movement that is doing that, because right now it's very minuscule movements around the world that are doing that. We need to build that to scale to really have an impact.
Thank you.
I agree. Excellent.